All right. So today, in my work as a training strategist, I often get called into companies to help them, sort of view what's happening from a performance lens and how can they shift or change something to create even, better performance or momentum within their company. And what I find is that the majority of the leaders who really call me in are really disruptors in their industry. I find that they're dispelling long-held beliefs. They're creating new paradigms that are shaping the future of work. And I really wanted to create a platform where I could share these new ideas. My goal is to spark your imagination and hopefully inspire you to take some action in your own company. So each episode is designed to give you insider access to one of today's top leaders who are making simple yet really powerful changes that are having real impact in their organizations. And today I'm really excited to have John Briggs, CEO and founder of Insight Tax, here to introduce himself, introduce the really cool things that he's doing with taxes in his world. But then we're gonna really transition into the work that he's doing to actually disrupt the typical performance cycle. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about Insight Tax and what you're doing to disrupt the tax industry or the accounting industry, however I should be saying it.
Well, so I think we're an accounting firm. We do taxes. People probably have heard about that thing called taxes. They're probably familiar that there's a deadline every year imposed by the government, typically. So businesses March 15th, individuals April 15th, you can extend 6 months. So our company, we currently have 37 team members, and a lot of our life is geared towards helping clients hit these deadlines. The struggle in our industry is that people don't even have their documents till usually the end of January. So you're talking about a very short window to meet the first deadline. And of course, the government has built in that if you don't get things paid, if you owe by April 15th, you owe them some extra money on top of the money that you already owed them. I think they have intentionally tried to crunch things in because they know that it's crazy. And so in the typical accounting world, accountants work 50 to 80 hours a week during tax season, and then outside of tax season that goes even longer than that. A lot of firms have a minimum 55 billable hour requirement, which typically will take 65 human hours just to get the minimum. And that's if you want to keep your job. That's not, hey, I hope I get promoted. That's, hey, if you want to stay around, you're going to put in at least 65. I mean, the stats show that the coveted position in the accounting industry is a partner track, and that's 10 to 15 years of 60 to 80 hours a week for 10 to 15 years, all year round. Usually you get maybe a couple weeks off in the middle of the year. So that's kind of what.
Happy about it, right?
Happy about it, exactly. Hey, they're paying you really well. I mean, yeah, we make it worth your while by paying you well, and people would even argue in the past, not even really that great. But anyways, that's neither here nor there when it comes to the pay. But so that's kind of what we're up against as an accounting firm, is this just like crazy idea of unconscionable hours that are required of you just to keep the job.
Let alone excel at it, right? Let alone excel at it and get exceptionally good. Yeah, I love it. So, I think what's fun, and I think you should share with anyone listening too, is just your philosophy. If someone is one of your clients, talk about your mission and purpose for what your goal is when it comes to how you want to serve your client, because I think this is really interesting too.
Well, so our focus is, we want to take a proactive approach. Too many accountants get so stuck in like government imposed, I work for the government type of scenario. And so they're not really supporting the client so much anymore. And so part of that comes down to, look, I'm just so busy. Why do I even need to tell? I'm so busy. I'm not even going to tell my clients I'm so busy. I'm just going to ignore them. So we hate that. I mean, duh, hello, clients pay our bills. They're the reason the lights stay on. They're the reason we have food on the table. They're the reason we can afford to take vacations. So we like to be proactive with our communication, not just to save the client money and taxes, but to actually help the business owner create a legacy so they have a lasting impression with their community, something that will be left behind when they decide to retire or pass on the business to somebody else. And so that's our focus. And certainly helping them save taxes is part of that. But it's interesting how having the focus of like, hey, business owner, client, how do you accomplish your goals and how do we help you with that? It changes the whole dynamics of the relationship.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a collaborative approach. And what I always enjoy every time I connect with you is just hearing like how you're blowing things up from both perspectives, right? It's actually not okay to be expected to work this number of hours, right? Only, for year after year after year after year to finally hit this like some kind of big achievable goal. Listen, we know that, the future of work, that's just not sustainable. It never was sustainable. What I love about what's happening in the world is that I think people have a voice they never had before, and they're saying no, right? They're saying no. I personally have friends who went to school, became a CPA, like went through all the things. And so many of them, burned out long before they ever got to enjoy like the real success that they were hoping from. So I love hearing how you're just like, how do we start to shift this for the employees? And more importantly, like as a business owner, right? How do I start thinking about what is it that I can do that you can help me to do so that my business is performing at a better profitable level, so that I'm making really good decisions all year long, so that at tax time it's not a surprise. Listen, I'm great at what I do. I am not great at managing my books, and I am always so appreciative when I realize that there's actually things I could be doing all year long that make that difference. But I find very few companies, kind of view it that way, that it's this kind of long-term relationship, and that you should be talking on a regular basis, and that things you do all year long can actually impact, at a greater level. So I just love your whole take on, the role itself, the stance you pay for your clients. And I think all of that has, just your own personal perspective has really influenced how you're running your own company, which is really what I wanted to get into today. Coming from, corporate learning and development, being a consultant for the past 15 years, I can't tell you how many employee development programs I've written in my close to 30 years, tons of them, and how many corporations I've been in and out of in the past 20 years, hundreds of them. And they are pretty much all the same. But then I meet you, and I see this list, right, of like everything somebody needs to do in order to request, and I'm going to turn it over to you, but that they know exactly what they need to do, and then when they feel like they've done it, they can actually request a review. So I think this whole concept of doing away with, the standardized process, that somebody else pushing it out on you and putting everything in the ownership of the person's hands is revolutionary. So I want to just give you a second to talk about your review process. Give the highlights. What are the things that are so different about how you manage your employee review process? And then we'll talk a little bit about how you got there.
Okay. Well, as part of this is coming from a place where I've talked about accounting firms and partners, the way to go, and 10 to 15 years, right? Well, the mindset there is it's the good old boy club, pay your dues, suffer through it. So you could have someone in an accounting firm who is creating tremendous value for the company in year 3, in year 4, in year 5. But no, you have to wait 5 to 10 more years longer to get that, big carrot at the end of the road, because, hey, I paid my dues, you got to pay your dues. I also one of my first jobs out of college was with a door-to-door sales company as their controller. And one of the things that I learned there, because there's a sales organization, was this concept of value exchange. And I remember the guy got up and gave a presentation. He called up one of the audience members. He says, "Okay, I have this hat," or he had a hat. He's like, "I want to buy that hat from you." And the guy's like, "No, I don't want to sell my hat." He's like, "I got $20. Here you go." He's like, "No, that's not worth it." They went back and forth. He ended up paying $100 for the hat. And then he says, "There's one thing we know for sure after watching this transaction, that the hat is not worth $100. He's like, "It's about value. It was more valuable for me to pay $100 because I believe there's more than that available. And for him, it was $100. It was way more valuable to him than just having the hat. He'd rather take the $100, right?" And so with those type of, the whole good old boy club and this experience in the back of my mind, I thought, one of our core values as a company should be value exchange. Easy on the customer side. We want to provide more value than what they pay us in fees. But what does that look like if it truly is a principle of our company? What does that look like when we have interactions with team members? I could have someone who's been with us for 6 months and they're doing such a good job and they feel like they're doing such a good job that we encourage them to come to us and say, "Hey, I'm doing a good job. I think I deserve a raise. And here are the reasons why. Here's the value I believe I'm creating for you." And so it doesn't matter, because most companies do this whole annual review process stuff. My wife was a high-level executive assistant for vice presidents at Intel before she became a stay-at-home mom. And she was telling me it's an annual review thing and everybody knows it happens. And the entire month leading up to your review, she's like, it was so cutthroat. All the friendliness and friendships you had basically had to be put on pause during these 30 days because you're now competing against your friends and you're potentially going to have to put stuff in your report that shows how they suck and how you're awesome. And so like these people are like having to create their own effectively master's dissertation to freaking, present themselves. And then on top of that, Intel had their little metrics. Only 10% got a max raise of like 5% to their annual. That was the max raise, 5% increase. And then the bottom, like 20% get fired and the other people just get to keep their job. A lot of companies work similarly, maybe not quite as cutthroat, but hey, guess what? If it's an annual review, what the heck is the actual purpose of that other than for some guy to get their, jollies off by like giving a terrible, like putting someone through a terrible experience. Waiting an entire year to give someone feedback on whether they're going to keep their job or not keep their job is actually detrimental to the growth of your company. And as a small business owner, I don't have the margins that Intel has. I don't have the banks in my back pocket. They're like, "Oh, I'm not running profitable. Cool. I guess I'm just gonna, take some money out of the bank because they're going to give it to me." No, us small business owners, man, if you've ever got a loan, you know what the heck that process looks like. So we have to be a lot more stringent about this. So if I have a team member, one, who is doing a good job, I want them to know they're doing a good job, because if I do that, guess what? They want to stay with me instead of, man, I'm doing all this good job and I don't feel like they value what I'm doing for the company. On the other hand, if you have a team member who's not performing very well, you're going to wait an entire year to tell them? Like, no, I never want a team member to be surprised if they're let go. They should see it clearly coming down the road because we've worked with them along the way. Like, hey, here's some stuff we need to work on. Okay, still happening. Here's a verbal warning. Here's some points of production. Here's some additional support. Still happening. Here's a written warning, and then fourth time, it's like, look, this is a behavior we've established here and it's not going to cut it. But you do that as it happens. You're not freaking going to wait 12 months to update someone. Mm-hmm. Hey, I just want to let you know you've been sucking for 11 months. So see ya. What? Why didn't you tell me? Like, anyway, so we have kind of just a whole, if If you need performance input, we're giving it to you. If you feel like you're doing a great job, we're going to have a conversation. And so in our company, I have one team member who's gotten 2 raises in the last 12 months because she's doing a freaking killer job. She's picked up her job faster than what we anticipated. She's creating the extra value, and it makes sense. I've had other team members come to us and they say, I think I deserve a raise. And we disagree with them. We say, we don't think you deserve a raise. And that gives a great platform and opportunity to show them, if you really do want that raise, here are the things that if you do these and hit these metrics, I'm willing to give you that raise, but here's the expectations if you're going to get paid that. And so we've just found it to be really valuable to just have that type of review process in our company.
Yeah, I love it. There's so many golden nuggets in there. One of the things that I really want to point out is this whole idea of there's a disconnect, I believe, between the annual performance review conversation and the connection to regular and continuous feedback that should be happening all the time. And even I've seen like really good organizations like build a quarterly process. So like every quarter you're going to review your goals. Every quarter you're going to review your goals. And what I see happening in this process is that it's literally like a daily conversation. Like here's, or a weekly conversation or a bi-weekly, like it's just a conversation that's happening all the time. They know exactly what they need to hit. And it, maybe it changes year by year, maybe it doesn't, right? It's just a progression through the position. That's what I've seen, in this particular instance. But because of that, like there's a continuous conversation that's happening, which makes the whole process feel very normal, right? The review process, and that, like you spoke to that earlier, it's like, oh, it's the day, and it's the only day I can get rewarded. Even if you have continuous conversations or a quarterly conversation, there's only one chance a year for you to gain income that's valuable to you. Like that's a really important day in an employee's life. But imagine the possibility that opens up the second that I come to work every single day, knowing and having a process that says, hey, if I want to advance today, I know exactly what I need to do. And I know exactly who to have the conversation with, and I get to drive the conversation. Because here's the other really cool thing that I think happens and that we haven't quite been able to capture is that in the course of a lifetime, where you put your foot on the gas when it comes to work versus where you want to take your foot off the brake because there's other things happening at home, I find very cyclical. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have, our company's basically 50-50 women and men. And, most of our women have children, and yeah, there's definitely a cycle with their ability to be focused more on work versus their need to be focused on the family. And from a cyclical standpoint, the first one that comes to mind is the summers can get a little rough when kids are home and they're not in school all day,
Yeah, listen, I got kids. We're constantly doing that shuffle. And I just, even like beyond children, like, as generations age, I mean, I'm in that place where I have parents I have to deal with, sometimes kids I have to deal with, sometimes for me personally, I'm all in on my career. Sometimes I feel like I need to take a break and catch my breath. And, I love that this sort of mirrors an ebb and flow, and that, I think there could be additional longevity with companies that we really don't see anymore, because you either have to be on the fast track or the slow track. There really is no in between. There's no allowances for what if I got sick? What if something happened in my family? And I couldn't push myself to the level that I would if I was in a high growth mode. And so this really kind of like sustains and really grabs that cycle. Did you always run your company this way, or was this a pivot or a shift or an evolution, I guess, is the word for it?
I mean, evolution is definitely a good word as a small business owner. I don't know if other of your listeners or clients or anyone hearing this has felt this as a small business owner, but we're kind of the most incompetent people in the business, especially if we're growing, right? It's like, I've never had a company this size before. I don't know what I'm doing. Like if we had to take a backtrack, it's like, oh, I remember what it was like when we were at this stage. And so in the beginning, it was me. I had the first hire, which was terrifying. And I mean, we didn't have any reviews with the first person. We were just talking all the time. And then, yeah, 12 months came around and our little payroll system tells us, their salary was last updated this day. And then sometimes it registered to me like, oh, that's a long time. I should give them a raise. There wasn't any conversation about it. I mean, it's really not a great approach, but that's how it was in the beginning, right?
That's how new businesses are, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And they wear 17 hats, so it's really hard to define what their role is in the beginning.
Yeah. And then so we got to the point though where we had a big enough team. We had done some trainings. We did a Clifton Strength Finder training once, and they call it Q12. Gallup put together this thing called a Q12 survey, and in it, you ask your team members a bunch of questions. One of them is, how appreciated do you feel at work? I don't know the exact wording, but that's effectively the gist of the question. And that was the only question we did not rate high on. It's because as a person, I don't need to hear praise. I have a lot of internal drive and it keeps me going. Certainly it's nice to hear, but I don't need it. And I had someone that you and I both go to for mentoring. She said, just because you don't need appreciation or praise doesn't mean your team doesn't. And this was like confirmation that they wanted it. So we started emphasizing more and doing more recognitions. And part of that recognition was, hey, look, we're already doing these weekly meetings, weekly one-on-ones. The purpose of those is to help give feedback to the performance of the team member, to figure out if their goals are matching up. It's like, it just makes sense that we start pushing harder and reminding them value exchange is one of our core values. If at any point you feel like you deserve a raise, we invite you to open that conversation with us. And certainly you have team members that are very insecure, very introverted. And with those people, we encourage our leadership team, because you identify them, you know who they are. We encourage the leadership team to open up the conversation. Like, how do you think you're doing? How do you feel like your pay compares to the results you're creating? And I know it's crazy because look, payroll, especially in our business, is the largest expense that we have, paying for our team. And effectively, I'm, from a profitability standpoint, killing my profitability, by encouraging them to think about, should I be making more money or am I good where I'm at? I just think for the longevity of the company and the desire to keep the team that I found that I feel like is a great fit and our clients love, it's the right thing to do. And generally, if they're getting a raise, that means they are creating more value, which means they are producing more. And so it's my job as the owner to figure that out without holding them hostage. It's not their job to figure out if I'm going to stay profitable. It's their job to, am I creating enough value for what I'm being paid?
I love it. I think that last part was really just so impactful, because I can hear, like, I love to play the devil's advocate and say the other side of it, right? So how do there's so, like, the having a standard performance review process that you get a raise once a year, we meet 4 times a year, like, it makes it all super simple and neat and not very messy and fair, right? Everybody's very concerned about things being fair. And I find that the people who are most concerned about it being fair are probably your least performers. Like, so, it's not about any of that. It's about looking at how do we create high performance in the company. And one of the ways to do that is to flip the switch on who's in control, right? When the company sets all of those parameters and standards, it makes it certainly easier for them to, like, maintain processes, right? But when you put the control into the hands of your people, all of a sudden, they have a newfound freedom, and they feel a lot more of that internal drive that you were talking about, I believe, around being in charge of my own destiny. So like people like you and I, we have the entrepreneurial mindset, right? I believe that is a very intrinsically motivated mindset. Like you said, like you often have to remind yourself that 90% of the world does not think like I do already, right? We're already all the way to the left. Quite frankly, probably weren't super successful in most companies because we wanted to do things the way we wanted to do them. And then all of a sudden, you give people the opportunity to be an intrapreneur, right? And that's really where they're most in control of their performance. They're most empowered to be their best selves. And, you know, it is just a complete switch in the dynamic. The other thing I want to just bring out, because I can hear people talking about it right now. You know, yeah, it's probably really uncomfortable for a good deal of people to say, "Hey, I'd like a raise," because we are not taught to ask for what we want. We are not taught to speak up, right? We are taught from early on to fall in line with the system, act accordingly, you know, pay your dues, right? And actually, people are very comfortable in those parameters. So just refresh again really quick. What are some of the things that you put in place to help people that this is brand new for them, right? I'm sure like in your company, it was easy for some people to adjust to, but as people come into the company, how do you help them adjust to this new system so that they can be successful?
So we have a training thing that you've been helping us develop actually. And we tell them from day one, we have like a cultural foundational video series that we make them watch. And that's the first step. Because it is so new, we want to tell them as soon as possible. Because a lot of times there's that whole aspect of they're selling themselves. We're trying to sell ourselves in the interview process. So you don't quite know what they actually believe of what you're saying or what they remember of what you're saying. So we want to reiterate all of those benefits that we talked about and who we are as quickly as possible. So in those videos, we explain like, hey, this is who we are. This is how we operate. If at any point you feel like you deserve a raise, you come to us. And this is what it looks like. You just say, I think I'm creating a lot of value. Here's my list of why. So we try to give them practical steps. Like, so if they're not comfortable saying, I want a raise, or I think I deserve a raise, start with just handing the paper over to the person in your one-on-one meeting and say, hey, I made a list of the areas I feel like I'm creating value, and just start the conversation there. Because then the person will be like, oh yeah, you are adding value here, here, and here. And oh, well, not quite here. And then if they're all in agreement, it's like, I think maybe this helps me deserve a raise, like they're all going to word it differently. But we try to give them that platform as much as possible. So everyone has a one-on-one meeting with their supervisor every week. And then on top of that, we have a weekly team meeting where we do some trainings. And part of that is reminding them of different aspects of our vision and who we are as a culture, so that we are really trying to ingrain in them, this is a different situation than what you're used to. And it's a safe place. And on top of that, we are in love with the book, Crucial Conversations. And so we give that to team members after their second week with us. And that's one of the trainings that we do every year. We revisit the concepts. So we're also giving them the dialogue and the resources to at least practice having difficult conversations. And for most people, admittedly, that is a difficult conversation to have. You're going to your employer and saying, I think I deserve a raise, because now you've just opened the door to potentially be told, we don't think you're deserving of a raise right now. And how does that conversation go? Right?
Yeah. How do you protect people in that space, for sure? And I would think that because there are built-in parameters around regular conversation, being transparent about, what's working, what's not, is this a value add, isn't that a value add, sort of taking the person out of it and just talking about behaviors, that there's some, readiness in your organization that, about the give and take of that conversation, right? Nobody's really probably going into that meeting like completely blind around what that would look like. So this is so awesome. I'm so happy to hear a little bit more of the inside piece around this. I just wrote down this crucial conversations. I always feel like one of my favorite sayings is you're only one person, one skill set, or one resource away from everything you desire. And you just sort of wrap this up for us, right? So the one person is John and his company. And I am sure he would love to connect with anybody out there that's looking to build this in their own companies, and hear from him around how this has been working and what's working there. So here's your person. Here's your skill set, right? Your resource, Crucial Conversations. That sounds like a book that more people should be reading. It's not one I know of, so I'm going to actually go add that to my list as well. And then I think the skill set that we could share with everyone is getting really clear about what it is each of your positions do, because none of this works, right, if you don't have at least a simple list of like the 5. How many things do you think are on the list? 5, 7? Like, does it change by position?
What 5, like 5, 7 positions in a company, or like skills, like values they create?
Within a position to like request your raise, are there like 5, maybe 5 topics that have a handful of behaviors in each one of them? Does that seem about right? Maybe
Yeah.
give or take?
Yep, 5 to 7.
So yeah, you're coming up with like the core 5 that somebody should be doing in their job every day, assigning a couple of metrics to them, and showing how that progresses over time. I mean, obviously that's something that you'll do and then you'll change. Like I always say, bring me the first thing we can tweak 2 times. Don't think you're coming to the table, right? How many times do you think those things changed for you before they became the version that they are today? At least 2, right?
At least 2, yeah, exactly. And that's what I love about being a business owner. Like, you just tell your team, like, look, this is what we're doing now, and we reserve the right to change it if it sucks or if it needs to be improved.
I love it. Well, listen, so let me just ask you this, because I would love to see anybody who's, an accountant out there looking for a progressive company. Where are you hiring the most these days? Are you sort of state by state, anywhere in the country? Who is your ideal candidate?
Yeah, anywhere in the country. They do need to be US based. It's just too complicated international with W-9s and things like that. But we have remote team members across the country now. And so, yeah, if someone's looking for a better life that doesn't require 55 hours minimum, we actually have a 55-hour maximum.
Woo!
Yeah. Give us a call, and I promise our model gives people the best career like option long-term. We have team members who, they've been in the industry 7 years, and they are making more money than the average partner in the average accounting firm. And they love their life. They have complete flexibility over it. We just have a really cool model. We just need more people.
Awesome. So listen, if you're a successful accountant out there and you're looking to, get a better quality of life to go along with the job you love, in John Briggs, Insight Tax is definitely the place to go. And quite frankly, who's your best clients? Can you take clients in all 50 states too? What businesses should be flocking to you?
Yeah. We're good with all businesses except manufacturing. It's not a strong suit for us, but I wrote a book for a cash flow management system for gym owners. So boutique studios, yoga studios, that type of size. If you're doing a service that's related to fitness, we're really good with that. But honestly, when it comes to taxes, service-based businesses, I know we don't want to hear this, but from a tax standpoint, you're all very, very similar from tax rules. And so if you're service-based business, we pretty much know how to help you.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Listen, thank you so much for sharing your strategy, your insight, and I know that people can take away some really valuable information from here today.
Well, thanks for having me.